So as we inch closer to this upcoming NBA season, and the dust has settled with all these off-season trades, we begin to hear some of the back-end stories of what went on. As it's pretty common that one particular party involved in the trade is going to feel salty versus another. And in this particular instance, we are hearing the back-end stories of the Marcus Smart trade and also the Damian Lillard trade. But just keep in mind with both of these stories that the NBA overall is a business first. And that paradigm shift that LeBron James had in 2010 when he made the decision to leave Cleveland, he actually woke the players up to have the understanding that this whole being loyal to a city narrative is bullshit. This league is primarily a business. It's not personal, but when you're no longer an asset to a franchise, they'll ship you off with no hesitation. Now, before getting to the back ends of the Marcus Smart trade, I'm going to first start off with the Damian Lillard trade. Now, at the time, Giannis was conflicted on the direction the Bucks was taking as a franchise, as the franchise was in a transition period between a new ownership group. Longtime owner Mark Lazary sold most of his shares to the Cleveland Browns owner, Jimmy and Dean Haslam. And it seems like people among that organization believed he made that move not only because of the upcoming CBA and all the luxury tax bills, but because he believed Giannis was leaving the franchise and he understood that the franchise value rides a lot on Giannis being there. And this is how it ties into the Damian Lillard trade, because if we look at it from Portland's standpoint, their value is tied to Dame also being there. And I understand that Dame, quote unquote, is loyal to the franchise, but at the end of the day, when they're going to trade him away, they have to make sure they get enough assets to build that value back when you leave. But going back to the Bucks ownership changing hands, a lot of the rumors of Giannis leaving was the reason why the longtime owner has sold the team, and Giannis even had to speak on this. Let's go to the chat GBT.
It's false. I want to stay, but I want to stay in a winning organization. That's false. But I get it, because he's a businessman. A businessman who was part of the group that bought the team for $550 million in 2014 and sold at a valuation point of $3.5 billion 9 years later. That's what business people do, Antetokounmpo continued. There were a lot of bills coming. The salary cap was going up. And at the end of the day, shit, if I buy in on a team and you sell to get that kind of return, I'd probably do the same thing. It's business.
Now, with the new ownership group coming in, Jimmy and Dean Haslam, they're going to have to make a splash to make sure that valuation continue going up. So you see the motivation behind getting Dame to the franchise. And also, you see the motivation as to why they were desperate to re-sign Giannis. They're trying to maintain those evaluations, which rely a lot on stars playing for these franchises. This reminds me of the situation with Dan Gilbert. No wonder why he was so upset with LeBron when he first left Cleveland. That evaluation of that Cleveland franchise took a major drop, the same way that evaluation was 10x when LeBron returned. Sometimes the NBA players tend to be in a bubble where they have a bunch of yes men around them. And Dame, I understand he branded himself according to this loyalty thing, but at the same time, he has to realize a lot of the Blazers' net value was with him being there. And just him going to Miami and them getting nothing in return was not really a possibility. We're still not sure if him and his agent was strong-arming the team, but Portland did the best thing to make sure that their franchise has a prosperous future going forward. And for the Blazers, it was for them to secure the bag and future at all costs, even at the expense of just upsetting Dame, probably one of the most valuable players ever in their franchise history. As for the last month that Dame was there, he didn't even speak to them at all. Particularly the GM, Joe Cronin, who serves as a proxy between the owners and Dame. The same way Joe Cronin was treating Dame, that's really how the owners felt about his value on his exit. It's like, yo, you're not going to fuck us over. But let's go to the chat GBT to see what Dame had to say.
It's business. It was anything to go against what I would have wanted, Lillard said. That part was irritating. Just based off how it was happening, I knew it wouldn't be Miami. The Blazers hadn't talked to Miami. So once it started happening like that, then I started hearing about all these other random teams. I was like, I'm probably not going to Miami. So I wasn't holding on to that too much.
Yeah, he definitely wasn't going to Miami because they didn't have enough assets for the Blazers to flip. As we've seen, they did really well with the Bucks trade that they were able to make 2 flips. just the assets Miami was offering for Dame was not enough. But also there's a business side to the Marcus Smart trade, as the Boston Celtics not only took on more salary during the offseason, but they have to make sure, especially with this upcoming CBA, that the pieces around Tatum and Brown could be maximized the most and the fastest. Because just them two being together, it might not even last that long, because the more the Celtics operate under the cap year after year, not only is it hard for them to pick up new players, but they'll begin to lose future draft picks to improve their teams 7 years out. So the Celtics did the smart thing that a lot of teams struggle sometimes to do, which is to trade a beloved player, maybe he's leveled out or just peaked out, and make another grand step to making sure that you can get to that championship level year in, year out. And a prime example of this was when the Toronto Raptors got rid of beloved DeMar DeRozan for Kawhi Leonard. That's the type of sacrifice a lot of teams struggle to make in order to go up to that next level. And you can even look at Ben Simmons' fit in the Philadelphia 76ers. Them actually, when they had Jimmy Butler, they should have gave up Ben Simmons instead. They should have traded him to get some assets. Then they could have took that next step up to be that championship level franchise year in, year out. Those sacrifices is sometimes some things a lot of franchises tend to overlook, but it does tend to look ruthless, as when the Boston Celtics traded Isaiah Thomas for Kyrie. That's how it really looks like. A guy that's beloved by the franchise, when he gets traded away, it looks cold. But at the end of the day, for the players, nobody will feel sorry for you, particularly the fans. But Marcus Smart spoke about his exit with the Celtics, and surprisingly, they told him that he was good, that he wasn't going to get traded, and he ended up getting traded, but most importantly, he didn't even hear it from them.
You always want to be where you're wanted, and another team's trash is another team's gold. So I'm glad to be here, Smart said. I'm glad to be on an organization that wants me and sees me as great value. So I'm ecstatic and I'm ready to get going. With the Celtics, if I'm being quite frank, I knew I would be traded eventually, Smart said. Just figured it would be the next.
He knew he would be traded eventually because of that upcoming CBA. They just can't afford to pay Tatum and Jaylen Brown all that money and then keep other guys on the roster. And next season, Tatum is up for big money also. So that's where it tends to get tricky starting in 2026.
I'm glad to be on an organization that wants me and sees me as great value. So I'm ecstatic and I'm ready to get going. With the Celtics, if I'm being quite frank, I knew I would be traded eventually, Smart said. Just figured it would be the next season, just based off my contract and with the new CBA. We already knew that, but it was just the way it happened. I was told everything was good after asking multiple times. Like, I'm hearing rumors, what's going on? And they're like, no, you're good, you're good, you're good. And then when I do hear about the trade, it's from Shams on Twitter before I hear from the team.
And it is definitely that cutthroat. They'll look you in the face and give you certainty when they know your situation is really uncertain. Just look how it played out with Coach Monty Williams and the Phoenix Suns when they got eliminated in the season after they made the finals. The owner and team president was shaking his hand and gave the media assurance that Monty Williams was fine, later to fire him that same summer. So at the end of the day, this is a business. It's no hard feelings. The franchises are definitely going to go and do the best thing for them and to make sure that they secure their net worth also when it comes to the superstars, because them being there does factor into that $3 billion or $2 billion or $1 billion evaluation for a lot of these franchises. And some of the new owners buying these teams for $3 billion, best believe they're looking to flip these teams again for $6 billion. But the only way to do that is to add more value to the franchise. As going back to the Phoenix Suns, their owner is the only one that purchased the team for about $4 billion, and they're actually worth a little bit less than what he bought them for today. But he's spending the most money as he acquired Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant. So that's not a coincidence. But as more of these NBA franchises get sold for billions of dollars, I expect new ownership to keep pouring into these teams. They can't afford for stars to leave the team and leave them hanging with that valuation that they just bought the team for, because best believe it's definitely going to go down after that.